Okay, let's go ahead and get started, everyone. For those that do not know me, I see some familiar faces from 30 minutes ago. My name is Matt Tederick. I'm the interim town manager. I want to introduce a few people in the room. I want to introduce Mayor Jean T. Walt in the back, who came out tonight. We have Councilman Gary Gillespie standing up in the back. We have Councilwoman Latasha Thompson sitting in the back. And we have Vice Mayor Bill Seelock sitting beside Chairman Walt May. So we have a good, good representation of elected officials here tonight. I also want to introduce Tina Presley, who's the executive assistant at Town Hall. She's only worked with 8 town managers over the course of her career. And then lastly, I want to introduce Chip Lickson, who is our facilitator for the evening. There's perhaps some misperception as far as the purpose of this meeting, but the town government really wants to see a greater use of our facilities and try to find consensus where possible as it relates to use of the village common space as well as parking issues. And so, there's been numerous business meetings, breakfast, etc., which really just turned into a time for people to share or vent on various problems. What we're trying to come up with, gather information so that Chips can compile a report, turn it into me so that I can craft it and present it to town council for their consideration as far as the legitimate policies and procedures as it relates to utilizing the village common space. Right now it's very vague, it's very open, it's left solely to the discretion of the town manager. I can independently pick and choose what events happen at the Village Commons area. I can independently decide when Main Street should be closed or should not be closed, and I think it needs to have some greater procedures and policies that have the buy-in of the community like this. And so we're hoping for some really good feedback. Chips will go over here in a moment some of the ground rules and some of the changes that he suggested as far as the format of the meeting. But I got a lot out of the first meeting. I think we all learned some lessons in the first meeting, some takeaways, and I'm real excited about tonight's meeting. I'm hoping tonight some good questions there, and I think we're looking for some really good feedback. So thanks for showing up. Again, hopefully we can roll through this meeting pretty quickly tonight. Chips, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. I appreciate it. For those people who weren't at the first meeting, my function tonight is to be the facilitator of the meeting. And as such, I don't have a vote, I don't have a comment. I am listening, like we all are, to each of you. Let me talk a little bit about the format, because there is a change. We found last meeting 2 weeks ago, we had some input with regard to the meeting itself, that it really didn't work to put up all the stickies and so forth and vote by dots. I want you to know that everything that came up 2 weeks ago was captured, and we do have that data, including the vote count and so forth. And that's going to be part of my report, and it's going to be part of considerations. Tonight, we thought it would be a little bit different as far as the format is concerned. So the original plan was to break up into smaller groups, subgroups, with 3 constituencies, property owners, business owners, and residents. And it's not to outweigh each town residents. Don't fall into a lesser category than business residents and historic area and so forth. And a lot of it was going to be controlled by the size of the group. Personally, my prediction was that meeting number 2 this week, this meeting was actually going to be the largest meeting in terms of numbers, because people had heard of the first meeting. They maybe went to the first meeting, and they could also go to this meeting, and for that matter, you can go to the third meeting as well. But in fact, point of fact, and we thought about the possibility of going into the neighboring space, which I understand is going to open up about 6:30 and give the possibility of more space, more chairs, and so forth. But the truth is, it's not a huge meeting, and it could be that it will work out that we will all stay here. We do find that facilitated meetings, of which this is one, works best with ground rules. And so we recommend 2 ground rules, and they are very simple: no interrupting and no attacking. So everyone is entitled to their opinion, and I'm going to add a third, because there's been a little bit of news today, and people may want to talk about something which is not necessarily directly relevant to our purpose tonight. So the third ground rule will be the facilitator can enforce the previous ground rules, and I reserve the right, if you will, to get you back on track and go on and make sure that you're not attacking or you're not interrupting. The meeting will only work if each person who has a say, and you don't have to speak out, but each person who has a point to make needs to make that point and be heard. Now, I think this will be a group of the whole. Are you comfortable with that? Because so we need to designate or work a mechanism to capture some of the good thoughts that we want to capture, because that will become the basis for my report and my work with Matt, and then our work in front of the town council, many of whom are represented tonight here, and which is great, because I've talked to several of you, and they are listening. Are there any questions with regard to the sort of setup? And if we find there are chairs up here, and I promise that I don't spit when I talk, and but I'm willing to even back up a little, and if necessary, we can bring in more chairs. Is everybody okay with the ground rules?
Yes.
No interrupting.
Yes.
He interrupted. He's out. No, you're in. Yeah, thank you. I got acknowledgement. So I'm going to pretend that he speaks for the whole group. Everybody is all right with the ground rules. Any questions about that? So I was handed a, and we met several times after the last meeting, and we discussed what might work and what doesn't work. And so I think each of you have been passed out a piece of paper, and that will contain what has to be discussed tonight. So Matt needs input with regard to the different questions and points that are discussed. Originally, when we broke into small groups, each small group would have a spokesperson for the group. Now, we have designated quite a bit of time tonight, as you can see from the, if you can read this, a simple agenda. You have a copy of the agenda in front of you. I think it's going to in great measure depend upon how we do. And as a group of the whole, we're all together, we don't have a particular spokesperson yet. It may be that I will go up to Matt in a half an hour and say, Matt, we've got to break into smaller groups. You're not going to be able to get the ideas that you need. Or it may be, which I hope it will work, that this works out really well. To a certain extent, this is the, shall we say, more democratic way, because you can hear everyone's point and so forth. So are there any questions about what's going to happen tonight? Now, you do see on page 1 of the handout, and I assume everyone who wants one has gotten one. Tina, is that right, as far as you know? Yeah, good. So you do have to consider, if you will, in your thinking, the items that are listed below, the event categories, because you represent a lot of different aspects, and maybe more than one. Matt has already said, and he certainly knows a lot of you, and I know a lot of you too. I think we have good representation from each of the groups who has input. So this is not, as Matt said, this is not just one of those regular meetings. This is a meeting where your thoughts will be prioritized to a certain extent and then reported eventually to the town council, and will result, if appropriate, in modification of ordinances or whatever is necessary. And it's also a great learning opportunity for us to show the county what the town can do. We happen to have the chairman of the Board of Supervisors of the county. So if there are no questions about what the process is going to be, I think it's time actually now to move on to actually talk about them. So I would suggest, if you're comfortable doing this, if you want to discuss, and we should go into more or less order, I would like you to please, first of all, would everyone please kindly take the time to read the top 2 criteria for questions before you have anything particularly to say. And then, if it's okay with you, if you're comfortable with that, I'd like you to stand up so everybody can hear. Give your name, if that's okay. And it's all right if you would identify yourself as, hi, I'm Chip Lickson, and I don't have a business, I don't own property down there, but I am a resident of the town and I care what happens, which is true, of course. No questions about the process? Okay, we're ready to tackle some of these questions. So let's actually look at the questions beginning on page 3. And one of the, I think, goals, I'm sorry, page 2. Page 2, thank you. Yeah, this is a very shy group. They're not willing to shout out their corrections. But I think the purpose, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, one of the considerations is, should the town absorb the full cost of events and for all the services that are provided? Right now, as reported 2 weeks ago, it has cost the town a certain some money in order to be as liberal as we are with regard to events in what we call the public spaces.
Question.
Yes.
Interrupt.
Yes, of course.
You may want to miss the first question, which is the criteria for measuring. You may want to read it, maybe get that input.
But I have to read it?
Yeah. You want me to read it?
No, yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah.
Okay, so the criteria, which is the measures the questions. If the town has many applications to choose from, but can only support a limited number of events, what measurable criteria should be used to choose the best event? So if you could think of maybe the top 3 or 5 only, for instance, expected attendance, expected value to the community, what criteria should the town use in measuring the event? So that's the question, Chelsea.
The question I would have is how many events are double booking on the same day? Because according to y'all's policy that's in code right now, you can't book multiple events in the same day. So if I've had an event last year the same weekend, and I am in good standings with the town, then I understand that.
No, stand up, just stand up.
Then, and if as long as I am in good standings with the town, then I get first dibs on that particular weekend. And if I do not want to do something that weekend, then you go to the next acceptable application for that particular day. But on certain ones of these events that we are here for tonight, and everybody knows the events that we are here for, and the policies and procedures that you want to do, come around on a yearly basis, the same time frame every single year, and have for multiple years. So now we want to change this to see what needs to be done. So the criteria for the application is, if I turn in an application and I've done an event on this particular weekend, and it was a successful event for business owners, or whatever the event that so be intended for, a church, a wedding, or a festival, as long as I am in good standings with the town and want to continue to do this event with open dialogue between the town and the organizer, then this event is taking place. What we have run into for years, you've said, okay, this organization can have it for this day, this organization can have it for this day, and it kind of funnels in.
Yeah.
So how did I get mine? I built my organization from ground up. I didn't close the street the first year.
Okay.
I didn't ask to close the street after that. What we built up to was that. And that's why we are here. So as long as we are in good standings, then I believe the organizer of the event that has had it should have first right of refusal on that particular weekend.
That's your input.
That's my input.
That's a position.
That's
Right here
in
and then you. Okay, yes.
Stand up. You're going to talk.
I've done that before where I've stood up and I've just,
Fell back down.
so I'm curious, because we all don't know what criteria you're using.
Can you all hear her in the back?
Sorry.
Yes, that's right.
I don't know what criteria you're using now.
To measure? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be candid, I don't believe there is a criteria.
That's the point.
That's why I wanted to get the input from the group. What criteria, in your opinion, what criteria should be used to measure?
Well,
The expected attendance
There is somewhat
should be.
of a criteria.
Yeah, hold on, we're not
I'm
going to speak without raising hand. But we have a good start, and I thank you.
But what
for
Willie
starting.
said is correct, that's how it's gone in the past, it's like a first right of refusal. If you've had an event that year, they'll let you get it again that year. If there's empty space, you can try your event.
Oh, that's a fair.
And then they make you build it up, so as your event is growing,
Then
at first
you
you
evolve.
get half of the gazebo area, right? And then if you do well there and you say, hey, I need a little more space next year, then they might give you the whole gazebo. And then if you're building up beyond that, then you get the streets and such like.
I want to acknowledge her for being, Dan, please, if you don't mind.
I think the question really is, you said if you did well, you get more. So the question is, what is well? And Willie, you said the same thing in terms of, it did well. So what's the definition of well? Was it highly attended?
Right.
Did it bring business to the different business owners? So what is the criteria? I think that's what they're looking for.
Yes?
You were talking about, once again, back to the criteria. I love the idea of the gazebo itself with the festivals. What criteria are you going to shut down Main Street to impact all the businesses down there? My question on that was, this past year, and it's not bad mouthing or saying anything about Mr. Huck's festival. I love that. That was a great festival. It helped all of us. But to close Main Street and to put signs at each south end and north end of town to detour away from Main Street and have nothing down there, no vendors. We have festivals all the time. If we're able to set up on Main Street, that's a great thing. That brings business to all our businesses. But to close off Main Street from Chester Street to Royal Avenue with nothing there, did nothing for the business. They put us out of business for a day.
Right.
On a Mother's Day weekend.
Yeah, thank you for that input. We're off to a good start. Anybody else have input? We're pointing to you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I want to follow up on closing Main Street. I think we have festivals that have increased. I've been here 11 years as a business owner, And over the last, certainly the last 5 years, I've seen a number of the festivals increase in the numbers participating. I think it makes sense based on the kind of crowd control that one of the things that we need to do if we have an event that wants to take place on a yearly basis. I think the best folks to talk about crowd control is to pull the Front Royal Police Department into this to get an assessment of what it has taken from them to be able to kind of judge what do we need to do. Does it make sense to close the street? Does it make sense to have additional security there? But in terms of the events that I've seen, and including the Mother's Day event, makes sense to me to close the street. We need to figure out a way to accommodate those businesses that may be impacted. Not sure how to handle that. You know, I remember, and I just want to make one last comment. I do remember a comment that I heard was made that a business owner lost in upwards of $50,000 for closing for one day. I just kind of have trouble with that. But my point is, as a business owner, if it's going to impact me, well, how can you accommodate me? Maybe it is you're allowed to set up a booth. Maybe you're allowed to open up your doors, provide banners and so forth. But I do think that closing the street should be a dialogue, especially if it's over the course of several years that have been increasing in attendance, that we pull in the police department, get an assessment of what their call is. Thank you.
The non-interrupting also applies to me to a certain extent. So, to a certain extent, I mean, I do reserve the right to interrupt you, getting back on track. Not you. You were on track. The police department is well represented because our chief of police is not shy about saying what is needed.
Outstanding.
I think. I think that other communities have a checklist, specifically organizers of an event needs in other places to go to the Department of Public Works or whatever it is, police department, fire department, and so forth. And the question is, we don't want to make it, I don't think anyone wants to make it overly complex, but maybe it's too loose. Now, I don't know. That's for the town council to decide. Yes. No, I'm sorry. I didn't call on.
I'm sorry. I'm just going to stick up for a little bit of our side of the street for a minute, okay? So, so this would affect the Menifees and the brewery and Vinova, one of my places. Rick Novak, he's not tonight, which is crazy. I can't imagine. First of all, I'd like to say I don't know who lost $50,000, who's making that much in one day, but I want to meet them. I hope they're a single man, and let's just talk. But no one's making that kind of money, and no one's losing $50,000 a day. Okay. To be honest with you, even though I'm on the street that doesn't necessarily benefit from the full closure when it's at the gazebo, to be honest, we make money. The problem is that we lose parking, and that's really at issue with us. And I know the concern is that we lose parking to our restaurants or bakeries or breweries or whatever it is. And on top of that, there's nothing on our side of the street to get people to come down. So not only do we lose parking, we lose pedestrians. We lose both. Everything centers in that middle, and we're not dragging it down. People don't mind parking and walking. Heck, I mean, I'm not stupid. I own pavement. I sell parking at pavement for those things. So I get, I got an acre of parking. I'll sell it to everybody, okay? But at the end of the day, people will walk. But if there's nothing on that side from Chester down to, Royal? Mm-hmm. Sorry, not from me. We kind of lose the pedestrian parking, the pedestrian traffic. Mm-hmm. And that's what their concern is.
What is your point?
The point is if we're going to shut down the entire Main Street, mm-hmm. which is fine, we can do that for safety reasons. Mm-hmm. but we gotta do some things to draw people down a little bit down the street. Do some, do some booths, even have the people who are in charge of these events come to us and say, hey, you want to shop down there. How about you work with me on getting people to come down to that end of the street?
I see your hands, and you'll all get a chance. One of the considerations that we looked at, and I say we, this little committee that's doing the after action thinking about the last meeting and getting ready for this meeting, is should a business seeking to shut down Main Street make contact with the businesses on Main Street as hard as it is, I want you to know that is a consideration. Now, I think your hand was up first, and yeah.
It's me again. So the comment has been that the street's shut down, nobody can walk anywhere. And the businesses at the other end of the street that are away from the gazebo aren't getting foot traffic during that time when the whole Main Street shut off. We've been open. We have a real estate office. We've been open every festival. Nobody's coming into our office, but we've been there and we've been open. And if we wanted to hold something outside, nobody's had a problem with that. We've had something every festival, every Taste of the Town, we were open. Now we have a gift shop. We're still open. Nobody comes in and says, hey, there's a festival this day, what are you gonna do? We just know, we hear it from other people, and we find out where it is, and we go out and we put out our booth, or we put out our table. And if you have a business that's down the other end of the street, down the other end by the courthouse, where it is shut off, nobody's down there anyway. Who's down that end of the street? Except for...
But what I'm hearing you say...
The brewery?
well, no, I mean, up by the courthouse and that end.
One of the things that works in process is feedback a little. So what I'm hearing you say is if the street is shut off, it's up to people to make it interesting to go down there.
That would be correct. The last festival that we had nothing to do with anything down our end of the street, but we put out a big horse and invited people to come sit on the big horse.
Good idea. I didn't have a chance, but I saw it over here.
Well, somebody, I think Tim wanted to actually be fair.
In all fairness, yes, sir.
I think Radigan was
Real quick, taking off the Reporter's hat. If Main Street is going to be shut down for the day, why not turn Main Street into a walking mall with some vendors and stuff? Get them out of the side of the road where you're blocking all of the businesses, and set up the kiosks or the little carts or whatever, space them out evenly in a safe manner in the middle of the street, okay? And that will actually probably draw more attention to them because the street's shut down anyway. Make sure you leave room for like emergency vehicles and stuff.
Excuse me, just for clarification purposes. Are you talking about when it's shut down for an event as opposed to a walking mall shut down all the time?
No. Just for the event.
Okay.
Turn it into a walking mall for the day.
Okay.
And get all the booths off the side of the road where it's blocking a lot of the businesses and put it in the middle of the street because it's going to be closed down anyway. So that's an idea.
As much as I want to make my point, I honestly think that lady was before.
Oh, you see,
She was being very
this gentleman gets a star for honesty. Yes.
Gosh, I'll try to remember everything because I have everything. A number of things is, I think there were 3 points. One was attendance. How is that collated, or what are the numbers and how do you put that together? Is that the police who do that? That way.
I don't think there's been really the need to do that before. I think we know in advance how many officers roughly are needed per the event.
Well, I was looking through this, trying to ascertain definitions of success, and one of them was attendance. So therefore I thought, well, what are the numbers? How do you get those numbers? Does that come from, does somebody collect that data?
I don't know.
So what I'm trying to do is trying to get specifics so that we can have a formula, possibly.
Ah, you nailed it. That's what I'm looking for. So that's exactly right. So let's use an extreme example. Maybe extreme examples might be the best way to do it. If the town manager receives 5 applicants in one day, what criteria am I going to use to determine which applicant to choose? Mr. Huck suggested first come, first served based upon last year's usage. So that's one idea. Are there any other criteria that you feel should be used?
So, forgive me, am I out of order?
That's all right.
It's okay.
If you're out of order, I'll
Continue.
step on you, but you're not out of order.
So that was one, was, actually collecting hard data about attendance. And the protocol, how that's applied will come later, I'm sure. And then the other issue was, someone was mentioning parking and pedestrian traffic. Being a lazy pedestrian, I know that sometimes I've been excited about an event, circled, parking is unclear, because I'm not sure exactly where the event is, and I leave. I have some medical issues, so I struggle with how far I can walk. So if I can't find any, and I'm not exactly sure where on Main Street something's occurring, I sometimes disappear. So just an observation. So
It's a very valid observation.
Suggest that signage beyond Main Street might be somewhat beneficial. Just a thought.
Specific. Quite specific. Thank you.
Right, and then the other is, going back to point number 1, is the success, sorry Michael, was the success of, I care heavily about the businesses. They provide services, they provide taxes, they are a key anchor to the success of the town. So we have to find means to support them. So therefore, we have to be sure that they do receive traffic. And I think that's a clear priority. I know nothing. So those are just my 3 points. And I want to thank the gentleman over here for allowing me to speak and taking my turn.
Your turn, sir.
Well, I'm excited that I was.
Sorry, Mike. Did she introduce your name? Did you give your name?
Oh, Rippy, Gil.
Well, I'm excited that I was referred to as a gentleman. As much as I think we should just make David Downs pay for all parking in Front Royal.
Oh, yeah, come on, everybody.
As long as I've got a place to park and drink my beer, I'm a pretty happy guy. But having said that, in all seriousness, as a chauffeur and someone who's trying to bring more business into Front Royal for the craft beer and the wine tour business, one of my frustrations, and Rippy, you led right into it, was the parking situation. And I don't know how you fix that, but I do know that the comments made about, hey, we put some signs out here and put some signs out there. I'm telling you, man, nobody sees those damn signs. And that's not to be heard, but hold on. But where people can
I
actually...
I was trying to mean, but... So,
oh, you are? No, go ahead. I'm so sorry. But where people can actually park, directing people to where they can park at the different entrances of our wonderful town, I honestly think would be really helpful. And the nice little signs that look pretty, that sit on the floor, that nobody sees them, man. I mean, the gaudy, horrible ones that we don't want, that have the big signage that say, hey, listen, event parking this way. And as much as I don't want to see that in my small town, the reality is I honestly think that would help in terms of directing people to where we want them, whether it's Valley Health or wherever, to try and help with that situation. I think that would help everybody.
May I just lend
yes, you may.
And Rippy,
credit
you're a
to
wonderful
that.
client. Thank you.
Thank you. You're right. If I can't see the signs and I can't make out where to go, then I do leave, and I think others must do that. So for each effort I put out to attend an event, and each time if I learn that it's going to be difficult, the less likely I'm to participate.
All I was going to say, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, I hope you forgive me for that.
Oh, no, I'm
Okay.
fine, thank you.
All I was going to say was, it did come up in our little sub-meetings, whatever you want to call it, which do not necessarily represent you all, because that's the whole purpose of these 3 meetings. But one of the ideas was to have either the Front Royal Trolley or some other mechanism to have a big event with parking off site and free shuttle service, which occurs in other communities for large events. I just wanted to throw that out as something that came up. Nikki, then.
I want to speak to that for a second. You know, as one of the organizers of the Virginia Wine and Craft Festival, we have previously tried to utilize the trolley. Actually 3 years in a row, we had a service where we used the Avtex parking lot. And we offered for people to park there and then utilize the trolley to bring them downtown. And people didn't want to do that. They still wanted to park near the festival. They wanted to have access to their vehicles. So I think, you know, some of the suggestions that these guys have made with more larger parking signs or whatever it is, but also if we can look at Jackson Street and how we can better utilize that parking area and make it more attractive and make it more user-friendly so we have more parking back there too. There's a lot of things that we can do to move in that direction.
Yes.
Well, once again, we're speaking about Nikki and everything. We have two festivals. We actually have 3 festivals downtown that close the main street off, and they are organized. You have to sign up for a space. You have to be a legitimate, business or, a food truck or a vendor or something like that. As for just opening doors and letting people come out and setting their wares outside, that's something we used to have on Main Street called sidewalk days. We need to be organized to get people down there.
I think that's the purpose.
Yeah, it would be good. And you were talking about, closing Main Street off to have these festivals. I want you to look at the shopping center up there where Royal King is. If a person wants to have an event in the middle of the parking lot there, do you feel sure that Royal King and Martin's would allow that parking lot to be shut off where their customers couldn't get in? It's impacting all of us. And if it's an organized event where we have the whole Main Street with like my wife and I do, we have the bakery there, but we rent a space every festival in front of our business to draw business down there. The customers by nature are lazy. If they've got an event at the gazebo, they're not going to walk down Royal Avenue. And we have a great event with the wine and the beer, Brews and Blues. That is packed, but it doesn't bring traffic. It doesn't have to close Main Street.
Thank you. Yeah, and you're looking pretty good, by the way. I know you have look great. So let's go further down. I want you to know that Matt and the powers that be are well aware of the challenge, and hopefully they've gotten additional ideas. Let's go on to maybe the next item down. Who should the event organizer and beneficiary be? And again, I remind you, part of my input with regard to the assignment to facilitate was I wanted to know what other communities are doing. And I can tell you that Front Royal has been the least enforced or very easy to plan an event in because the application for events is less clear here than it is in some of the neighboring communities. And I can tell you that they range in size from Winchester, the Apple Blossom Festival, where you got to get permission from the A, B, C, D, and plan everything, to we're the most liberal that I have found. But I think the purpose is to find out the answers to all of these. Yes, ma'am.
Can I make a suggestion? I know you're in charge. But going back to the question that we were just trying to answer, which was to give Matt some criteria, we got one thing suggested, I think. So can we maybe erase the whiteboard up there at your agenda and write down some legit criteria for,
If,
that will help? Because that was the number one question that we got one answer from.
And I actually think that goes to the second question, which is what percentage should they pay? Because it should be based upon.
Well,
what they do.
that's the third. And should they even be, should there even be a percentage? Gary, if you don't mind asking, I don't have an eraser here for the whiteboard, and I think
Off the side.
Pardon?
Just
Just
you can
off
write
the
it off
side.
the side. Yeah, just write it off. Yeah,
Excuse me, I want everyone to be able to read it.
You don't want me to write.
So, what is it you are saying that should be written down?
Well, the answer to the very first question, identify the top 3 criteria in helping to determine if more than one applicant applies for a festival or event on the same day. How's Matt gonna figure it out? So William suggested first come, first served based on right of refusal from the previous year. What else should he take into consideration when he's making that decision?
There's a reason he was the acting mayor.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yes?
I heard several criteria actually floating around. But first of all, I did hear that people seem to be in agreement that there are successful festivals and some that aren't so successful. So that assumes there is criteria. And we should apply criteria to weed out those that aren't successful and keep and encourage those that are. So I say that because this is very important to understand what that criteria is. And I heard people say that attendance is clearly a criteria. If attendance is dropping year after year for the same festival, maybe we don't need it anymore, or we don't want it anymore. I think I heard one I hadn't thought of, which is that the festival is distributed in an even way across all areas that are shut down. So it's a community festival, not isolated in one area. I think that's a useful
What was the first
criteria.
one you suggested?
Attendance.
Attendance criteria. Even distribution.
Even distribution. I think some qualitative measure would be useful. I don't know how to measure it, but do people seem to have positive reactions or negative reactions to it? And I personally don't think that the fact that you've had it before is a criteria. I think that's a later question I saw on here. I think we maybe need to address that separately because, you know, you may have had it last year and against this criteria, other competing proposals would draw more people and be more distributed, and therefore maybe we should replace it because it better meets this criteria.
Did you give a third as well that I?
First come, first served.
Qualitative, I think, out there, if you can measure it.
Well,
Do people like it? Do people have fun? Do people enjoy it?
People spend money.
Yeah.
How about the revenue it actually generates for the
Success, I
town?
would say.
Revenue, just basic.
Okay,
money.
Revenue.
a good suggestion.
That's good.
Yes, Patricia?
Cost to the town.
Yes.
So by revenue, we're talking not to the town or from the town, we're talking about the total revenue for all the exhibitors or whatever, the event. The event revenue.
Businesses too, right?
Isn't that
I
right?
think it could be either, depends on the function of the event.
But that's another item, and that is should the town be reimbursed in some.
No,
No. Is the town making money off of
Could
this?
the town make money off of it, or is this for local businesses to make
Now,
money?
I
off
think
of
Matt has something to say about that with the town making money, because I know I brought it up.
Well, I mean,
at
if we
one
were
point.
gonna raise money for something that goes to the town, I mean, that would be part of the actual qualitative part of it,
Yeah, I'm
correct?
happy to address that. It's my assessment from town council, the town council is not interested in generating funds for town government for the events. I think what the interest is to generate money for businesses and promote tourism and for the events to be successful for our citizens. So I hear you. I mean, I think these are good. This is exactly the kind of criteria I was looking for. So that's great. So if are there any other criteria that you feel is necessary? I'd be curious, how do we measure that now? How do we measure attendance? How do I measure revenue? Do I collect, do I go out and have them do a report or?
Have every business that was involved in on that day send you a report of their revenue.
Is that a suggestion that you have on that?
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking about too is vendors. I mean, does the event bring vendors in? Is the number of vendors?
When you say vendors, do you mean outside vendors?
Outside vendors, or even those of us who are working, have stores and, you know, out front. I mean, is the number of vendors increasing or decreasing, and whether or not it's beneficial for a vendor to get a space at an event? And I think that's something else that, you know, would be part of that as well.
You're capturing this, right? Okay. Yes. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I just think we need to be really, really careful on the revenue issue. I think there's a number of activities and festivals we have in town that bring in significant numbers of people. Maybe the benefit is more to the restaurants or some of the other businesses, but some of those events are almost charitable events. Some of those events don't take into consideration having to pay for things. So just be careful how you define revenue as one of the criteria for measuring the success of an event.
Next question. So if these were the 5 criteria that we would use, right? If we had to get it down to 3, what would you feel are the top 3 criteria that should be used? Is that a good way to do it? Can I do that, Chips?
Yeah, that's what we do when we use consensus.
Someone called out and you didn't write it down, cost to the town or police or whatever, the cost.
Well, that's in another portion of
Yeah,
this.
that's another
We're
portion.
talking about whether it should be part of the criteria.
Even though it's in another portion, isn't it part of the criteria
I think so.
for the application, if you will, or consideration by the town?
Except if you
So-
have a higher attendance, it's gonna cost more just naturally because you're gonna have to have more
Well,
police
that's
presence.
factored in the course cost to the town. So, I mean, this is real good stuff. These are solid, and you know, one of the things that we talked about in conducting this series of meetings is, well, what if someone's not there? Well, these were designed they're 3 separate. They were designed specifically so they could appeal to everyone who had input. And I would say that we have gotten a few letters, right? And there is a way to input, and it will be considered. But this, what we're doing tonight, is going to take a pretty high priority because it does represent a consensus. Remember, those of you who were here 2 weeks ago, I talked about consensus. And although we're not, shall we say, I'm not trying to reach consensus to pass along to the powers that be, we're getting consensus here. Yes, ma'am.
So Matt, you were asking for the 3
I was just thinking
categories.
if that's good.
So I think the last one, the expense to citizens to the town, should be probably one of the 3, and the attendance naturally. And then the number 2 over there is the equitable distribution of involvement. And if I can kind of so that's 3 that seem to be fundamental. And then have a question overall, and I'm sorry that I know nothing. Is there some kind of alliance of businesses?
Yes, there
are. Sorry,
represented in the back of the room with Nikki, and I'm sure there's downtown.
There's like 20 of them.
Okay.
Okay, so
That would make sense to have whichever specific alliance bring up proposals representing everyone, I would have thought.
Well,
Now, hold on just a second. Again, I'm going back to what I just said. This is the opportunity to be heard on the issue, because the decision basically has been made is, the decision is, this is open for the possibilities for citizen input. And got to give credit to the town council, town fathers, whoever said this. I think the purpose is, if I understand correctly, is to get consensus as to what the guidelines are. But remember this, the guidelines, as I said 2 weeks ago, they have to be workable. They have to be something that we can't do in the short range is like build a parking garage, or whatever. I mean, I'm just throwing that out, but.
Chips, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So if it'd be all right with the group, can we maybe, we've been 45 minutes on just question 1 and maybe a little bit of question 2. If it's all right with the group, I think we can come back to some of this later. Y'all ready? This is good. This is what I was looking for. So the third question here says, should the town pay for all, part, or none of police services and other services? On the, I'm sorry? Yes. On the back page, you will see these were your suggestion last time. We grouped parades, the cost of parades and other services. So, excuse me. So you get an idea. These are the actual log time of these various events, the date of the events, and the cost per event. So the question is, I think with these, we can just go right down A through E and maybe just do a hand check and try to see how many people support which answer. So, should the town pay for all, part, or none of police and other services? A, should the town pay 0? And should the applicant pay 100%? Who thinks that's the right answer?
Well, I think what he's asking for, you might want to think about this a little, is a show of hands. So who thinks the town shouldn't pay anything? It's for the benefit of its citizens and whatever costs the town, it costs the town, which is the current situation.
I would suggest that if you require the organizer to pay, they'll be far more selective about making sure it's a successful event.
Exactly.
So I would say have them pay it all. Have the town pay none, have the organizer pay it all.
I would say.
Wait a second, 1 second. Okay, we'll put here and then we'll come to this side. We got your thoughts. Yes, sir.
I would say that if you require the organizer or the participants to pay for police, you will eliminate the vast majority of, and you'll kill the festivals, you'll kill it. So that's right.
It's not like they make a whole lot of money.
Okay, we're going over behind you.
I'm along the same line.
Okay, yours? Yes?
Yeah.
No.
Is it mine?
Yes.
Well, there are 3 festivals that are very well attended, that the merchants on Main Street participate in the vendors. We pay a fee, like to the Chamber of Commerce, to the Heritage Society, to Freeba, that pays these expenses. We don't mind paying our share.
Yeah, we do, as merchants.
No, I know you have membership fees, but to these organizations pay to the town.
No.
For the town. Yeah.
Every event that you pay for, you pay $100 to $200 to have a spot in front of your shop.
Yeah.
I do not charge $200 to be a vendor in the event that I put on. I charge $25 to be a vendor on the spot that I put on, or give the spot to the nonprofit so they can be a part of it. If you want me to pay for all of these costs, which these are wrong, these are not added to the exact same that were here 2 weeks ago. So this will need to be fixed for us to do. Get us an accurate cost, and I agree, you're going to stop some of these vendors from coming in. I have tried very hard to bring all of Main Street on. I have walked in to every business on Main Street, introduced myself, and asked them to be a part of. You keep bringing up these other 3 events that do not include anything else or block your business. I'm not blocking your business. I am staging cars down your side so you can have more attendants walk down Main Street to have something to do. And I've never asked you to participate. How would I answer that? If the town deems that I would have to pay that event fee, then I will need more sponsors, or I will have to raise my fees within the event. So instead of charging you $100 to be at that table, you're going to charge $300.
So Willie, which one would you answer?
I would say that our tourism money that we have right now for $20,000 in the economy that we live in right now is pennies for the tourism benefit that our community has for every event that we have in our town. So I would say nothing to the personnel.
So you're suggesting E?
Correct.
Town pays 100%, applicants pay 0. Okay, that's
100%.
Ma'am?
Are we still on A?
No, we're,
Was there one vote for A?
Well,
One
we're
vote
on
for A.
3A.
So
Well,
we've
we're
got
on,
one vote.
excuse me, we're in 3. So it could be any one of those.
Oh, I see, so I thought we were taking votes and had,
So I think we're going to get input,
Yeah.
let people say a little bit about it, and then we got to start picking the pace. So, we have a question in the back?
I think that was my objection.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something, Councilman?
Me?
Okay. Did you have your hand?
It would seem to me that a 50-50 split would be most fair. The town is going to benefit, but the vendors will also benefit.
So you would raise your hand to item C?
Yes.
Vendors, by
Okay.
vendors, you mean the people who
Vendors.
have spots on the street?
Yes.
Yes.
Or the person who's putting on the event, because I thought that's what we were talking about.
Well, we are talking about the application for the event. So
the applicant would be paying half.
That's right.
And how he
So, but
determines
it's
how
time-
he's gonna
it's
pay
time
himself
to vote
cost.
on these if we can. I mean, does anyone have something that they must say or else they'll collapse? Okay.
Actually, I think that we can honestly say that some of these events are independent. I mean, if we're gonna have trick-or-treaters on the streets, we're not gonna make whoever's putting on the hometown Halloween pay $4,000 to have trick-or-treaters on our street. That's ridiculous. I mean, who's the Scrooge or the Grinch that's gonna do that? I mean, let's be honest. So I think honestly, there has to be some sort of formula. How does this, I mean, whether it's, how does this, there has to be some sort of formula.
We're trying, I think I included myself, I don't have a vote. But what I hear is that the town is trying to come up with a formula. What formula works? Did you have something you wanted to say about that?
Oh, I have a lot to say, but I'll just.
Oh, I didn't say, do you have something to say? I said about this.
This sounds like passing the buck on everyone's part, and I'm speaking on behalf of this. What are other places doing? No one seems to be asking or discussing or suggesting. What does Strasbourg do? What does Winchester do? Not for the apple blossom, that's probably something exceptional. They've probably got millions of dollars of budget for that. But, other general, smaller shutdown events and so on. What do others do for criteria and applications?
I'm going to try, I tried to answer it. And I'm not speaking for, I haven't seen everybody's application for a permit to close down a public space, which needs sanitation, fire, rescue, police, whatever it needs. Those are specified in the application. And in this application, it's what are your needs and
I really meant what are other communities, councils or town managers using as a criteria when they get those applications in Strasbourg or other places? I don't know.
You can answer that, but
Woodstock, wherever, not necessarily within a few miles, but broadly.
If I could just, and that's a great question. These questions aren't really that, they're not hard. I just want to get an idea. Willie wants 100% town. Got it, okay. Someone said 100% event. Someone said 50-50. So let's just do a quick head count, just to get an idea. That's what we're trying to get input.
All right, so
Who thinks A? Who thinks A, that the town pays 0 and the applicant pays 100%?
Show of hands.
So we have 2 people. Okay. All right, who thinks the town should pay 25% and the applicant pays 75%? Okay, we got 1 person. Who thinks the town pays 50%?
1.5. Excuse me.
Who thinks the town pays 50% and the applicant pays 50%? Okay.
You're the voting person.
He's voting for all positions.
That's interesting. You got this down, Tina, right? Now, so I won't do it. All right, who thinks the town should pay 75% and the applicant pay 25%? Okay. Who thinks the town should pay 100% of all the events and the applicant pay nothing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, great.
I meant that one. I'm taking my, sorry, I'm stupid. I'm taking my first one.
One away from the 50-50. You were 50-50.
Oh, I put my hand up for applicant pays everything. I meant town pays everything. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so
that was one.
Sorry.
Comment, we have a comment because this person will collapse if I don't.
I will, because my comment is this. We are bringing in thousands of people for events, and they're all spending money. Maybe they're going to restaurants, they're buying things, they're getting gas, they're going by the donut store, and the town gets tax money from all of it.
Yeah.
It is also a safety issue. Well, maybe I'm gonna have 4,000 people, so I'm gonna pay, I need this many police. Well, then you're gonna need double, so we want more money. Well, I think that everywhere, we did a motorcycle run for a fundraiser. Fairfax County Police, they followed our guys from Winchester to Martinsburg and back again. Streets were blocked, nothing was charged. And it was through, and we did one in Fairfax County that went through Fairfax County, Prince William County. Never did those police charge
Town
us
pays
that.
100%. So you were to vote, town pays 100%.
Town pays 100%
Great.
because town gets 100% of that tax money, don't they?
Yep.
Just
But
saying.
not everything's
Okay,
revenue.
Chip, now go to the next one.
Please.
All right, next question. Who should the event organizer and beneficiary be? Should it be A, run by and benefiting only nonprofits?
No.
B, run by anybody as long as funds raised go only to operational costs of the event and to designated nonprofits? C, run by anybody to benefit anything other.
What profits are you talking about?
Whatever the benefit, who should the event organizer and beneficiary be of the monies that's be generated? Should it be a nonprofit? Should it go to nonprofits? Do y'all want to skip this question? I mean, I just, you know.
I think you should outsource.
I think it's impossible to answer. I mean, the revenue could be advertising benefit and you don't see the revenue, you see the revenue over a period.
So right now, so maybe I can help. Right now, most of the big events, if not all of them, they're nonprofits, right? Or
they're not.
Are you non?
No.
Well,
He said big events, and he is
Okay.
absolutely correct. The big events that we have in town are run by nonprofits.
So
Yes.
so here's an example. I have a business in town, and I'm just a business owner. Okay? I'm just a business owner. Should I be able to have an event and generate $10,000 for myself? That's what the purpose of this question is.
More power to you.
So I should be able to close Main Street and the
No.
gazebo. Right, see? All right, so that's what I wanted to get across.
No, and most big events in every town benefit
See,
nonprofits.
her collapse possibility includes
It is.
commenting on everyone's answer. Yes.
Skip that one.
My question is, what constitutes a nonprofit organization? Do they have to be a bona fide 501c3 or some other classification?
That's a good question.
Yes.
So the wine
I'm good with that.
and they're a nonprofit.
They're a nonprofit.
And the Festival of Leaves.
Is a nonprofit.
Everyone
Society.
and not answer. Skip.
So you got it, yeah.
I got it.
I got the question asked
So
anyway.
we'll come back, let's go to the next one, see if we can get quicker consensus.
Okay, I'm down, according to my count, we're at 5.
5,
Correct. Should event proposals have a proposed budget? Many communities do, by the way. And the answer is yes, no, or do you have other suggestions? I would strike others because it's either yes or no.
Yeah, the full question is, should an event proposals require a proposed budget and budget breakdown as well as a report on financial results following the event, including projected and actual ticket sales as the example?
So you're saying, I apologize. So you're saying given to the application? Okay.
So should there be a budget and a budget breakdown part of this process? Who thinks yes? Okay. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15.
Well, the consensus.
All right, who
of it
thinks
is-
no? All right, so the consensus will be a yes. Now, here's a good question, I think. How long should Main Street and other facilities be closed for an event?
excuse me, this one, you've sort of lived through to a certain extent. So what's your input regarding
So, and again, no right answer, no wrong answer, just looking for input. Less than 2 hours, 2 to 4 hours, 4 to 6 hours all day, no restrictions, however long it takes, should not be closed down at all.
It depends on the
And is there?
Okay, it does.
It depends on the event. Some events are only a couple of hours. Some events are all.
Well, that's then.
Then E,
So
and you're voting E. What is the
Yeah.
maximum we'd like to see?
However long
So
it
how long
takes.
should Main Street and other facilities be closed for an event? Who thinks it should be closed less than 2 hours? Okay, interesting. Who thinks it should be closed 2 to 4 hours? Okay, we got one. Who thinks it should be closed 4 to 6 hours? 2. Who thinks there should be no restrictions however long it takes?
Well, assuming it's all in one day.
Yeah, that's-
Can I qualify my hand?
A full week.
May I, sir?
Go ahead.
Because you're in charge, let me.
Well, I work for him.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But is there an option to propose a caveat that say 1 or 2 hours before the event, 1 or 2 hours after the event? Just to be practical with respect to rolling?
Exactly, I'm thinking 6 hours for an event, then you gotta close up and shut down. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah.
That might actually be
It's just a thought.
police requirements, aren't there?
I mean, he's looking out for.
Okay, we're gonna move on. We're at item 7. How long should the Village Commons parking lot, you know where that is, and other facilities be closed for an event? So this is not shutting Main Street, as I understand, but it is shutting the parking lots.
Okay, so,
That doesn't mean,
I would suggest for the duration of the event.
I mean,
That's one option.
No restriction.
No restrictions.
Do you want to go through?
yeah, let's just get, who thinks less than 2 hours? 2 to 4 hours? 4 to 6 hours? All day? Okay?
Oh, I'm sorry. No.
No?
Strike that. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
no restrictions,
Erase
however
that,
long it
erase
takes.
However long it takes.
All right, good.
people without some cars.
Okay. When should a town consider applicants for events? In other words, when should I consider getting in the applications? At any time? Quarterly? Biannually? Or once a year? So should the window be at any time? In other words, rolling application process? Who thinks that?
Earn your money at any time.
Okay.
How many people didn't vote?
Raise your hand. Yeah. 2, 4, well, you did, right? 6, 8,
Oh, yeah.
12, okay. Who thinks quarterly? Okay.
That's not actually
Who thinks biannually? Okay, so twice a year. I think that's the way it is now, right? No, we can get them anytime. You can't do it 6 months in advance. I think you have, yeah.
It allows for a serious plan time.
Okay, who thinks once a year? Okay, good input. Next question. Should an event that occurred the previous year receive any preferential treatment in determining that the same event should be approved in subsequent years? See, well, that was your question.
As long as they're in good
Does anyone know-
standings.
Does anyone understand? So should an event that occurred the previous year receive preferential treatment in determining if the same event should be approved in subsequent years? So in other words,
With caveats.
well, okay, maybe see why we did the criteria earlier on.
I think
We
when
had
they
the
said
criteria
it's
and
in
we
good
had the
standing.
measures of effectiveness. So if I know this is the criteria and we have a mechanism to measure, okay, now, should they receive preferential treatment? I guess the assumption is, and I don't know if it's fair to do that in this process, Chips, I guess the assumption is, assuming at the end of this we determine that there's some kind of criteria that's determined and measured, should they receive preferential treatment? Is that a fair way to do it?
Yeah, I'm not gonna renew my vows every year.
Well, what I wrote down, and I wonder if it's okay with everybody, consensus, is the history of the event. In other words, if it was a successful event, as you pointed out, it should be taken into
You say
Okay.
as an organizer.
All right, so who thinks yes, they should get preferential
Are you saying
treatment?
event organizer?
And you organise
Okay,
it.
2, 4,
Well, it may be a
6,
new event, but an organiser with a very good record.
All right, who thinks no preferential treatment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, good. All right, should an applicant be limited in terms of the number of events they can have in a given year? Should an applicant be limited?
Not if they.
One event per organization, limited number of events per organization, unlimited number of events per organization. Okay?
Okay, well, you read them all, but didn't capture your input.
I'm good.
So let's go back for a second and you raise your hand with one event.
I want to ask a question. Are we talking about the fact that we can only have 2 full closures down in any given month, correct?
Oh, we haven't got, no.
Well, I mean, that's the current code,
Yes.
correct? Okay,
Yep.
so that would take in like unlimited number for one, okay, gotcha.
Now, with this, what I'm trying to get here is, and Chamber's a good example.
Oh, BD changed that
Yeah,
altogether.
Right, Chamber
Okay.
does a couple of 2, 3 events.
Okay, gotcha.
3 events, and Willie does 1 event, okay. Should the Chamber be able to do 6 events? in a
No,
year, you know?
Willie.
And again, I'm just looking for input. I'm not right or wrong answer. And so, who thinks should be 1 event per organization? Okay.
Per year.
Right.
But based upon the criteria.
Based upon 8 criteria. Yeah. Limited number of events per organization. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Unlimited number of events per organization.
I'm on the fence on that too, on that.
6, 8.
No, I haven't voted. I was trying to ask a question.
Oh, you're not voting now? Okay.
No, I'm voting for it.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Good. Thank you.
As long as they.
As long as
Okay,
the criteria.
Okay.
Tina, do you feel you captured their vote? Thank you.
All right. Next question. Should the town limit the total number of events held on Main Street over the course of the year? So should we limit the number of events held on Main Street?
Think about this. It's full, assuming full closure of Main Street, not partial closure.
Full within our criteria.
I've got a problem with these questions because it's very seasonal. I mean, if you compare March through September, that's probably when just about all the, perhaps October, all the events happen.
But that is
You're right.
considered by the applicant. I mean, you wouldn't put an application
Your questions are 1 per week, 1 per month, 1 per quarter.
No, he's not saying mandatory, but would we limit it to that?
And and Willie and I have had these discussions, probably Nick, I've had these discussions, right? So, do you want what if we had, what if the Chamber came in, Willie came in, and 2 other nonprofit organizations came in that met the criteria, that they had good attendance numbers, they had a great budget, they had all these great vendors projected, okay, et cetera, et cetera. Should every Saturday be closed in the month of June?
Not at all.
Okay, so that's what I'm getting at here, is what number,
In any 1 month.
yeah, what's the right number to use? So should the town limit the total number of events held on Main Street over the course of the year? So,
excuse me, clarification.
Just a clarification, are we talking about events that would shut down Main Street?
yes.
Yes.
Because the reason I'm asking, because like I'm a huge fan, obviously, of the Front Row Brewery, and you know they have different events which don't in any way require the shutdown of Main
Correct.
Street, but are
Correct.
different
Yeah,
events.
that's right. That's right.
And they have the use of the facility, the parking lots behind them, and I mean, we're shooting ourselves in the foot if we're stopping.
But we're not talking about
Okay,
that.
so we're not. That was my biggest concern.
My understanding is Chester Street's out.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
I know there's some events that
that's
close Chester Street as well.
That's the beer museum.
Sir,
There are many events held at the gazebo, you know, on almost a constant basis. Why do we have to close Main Street to have an event at a gazebo?
that's another consideration, isn't it? Is it gazebo, pavilion, but don't forget the pavilion, by the way. That
Yeah.
area is going to be open.
Okay. So, all right, so I'll repeat the question, then we'll get answers. Should the town limit the total number of events held on Main Street over the course of the year? No limit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay.
Based on the criteria.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so back to this criteria.
I can see that.
1 per week. Right? 1 per week. 1 per month.
No, you can't have it.
1 per quarter. Oh, 1 per month. Okay? Is there another answer that we don't have? I don't think we have consensus on this one.
I'm going to say 2 per month.
Yeah.
2 per month.
I would prefer 2.
All right. Who thinks we should have? We should be allowed to close Main Street twice a month.
I'm gonna vote that, because you gave me no option on the no limit. I went with the no limit because I didn't have any other
I'm so
option.
glad you're not pointing that out to us.
Okay. All right.
I'm gonna change mine to no, I didn't vote, so.
All right. So let's do it again. All right. Should the town close Main Street?
Listen up.
Should the town close Main Street twice a month? 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, we don't have consensus, do we, on this one? What's the, who, now let's
We now have
can I get some more
we
input?
have more no limiters.
No limit.
You're no limit again.
So this should be closed, so you're okay with closing Main Street 4 times in a month?
Can I add a stipulation to that? You know, just a suggestion. If we're gonna close Main Street, make it a function. Don't just randomly put a sign at each end of town, I'm gonna close Main Street.
Oh, that's up to the town. Don't forget, someone is going to make a decision on the application based upon this criteria. You've been very clear. This is very possibly the most important thing we've done tonight. So I would hope that no one would arbitrarily just close Main Street and nothing would happen.
I mean, we'll wonder why we.
No, Main Street is not closed all the time unless you have an attendance that justifies the closure of Main Street.
Right.
Well, no, it is closed more often than you would really. Y'all can see when you're closing down the street sometimes, but we can't on the other end. So we'll be like, why is there no one walking down the street for hours? And we realize that there's an event, not a big event. We're not talking about a big festival, but some small little gathering that they've shut that side of the street down for, and we're like, oh, well, now we know why, but we don't know about it.
The only time the town shuts the street down when a festival is not going on is when the procession comes to the church.
It was, where's the number? It was in 2019.
If you're talking, you can't hear what's being said.
So we always think of 4 events a year. And by the way, I'm a proponent of all these events. They make money for the town. But there are 60 closures in 2019. Guess what? 47 of those were crap. Sorry. You know, but I'm just saying, nobody knows what they were, but all of a sudden, I don't see anybody walking in front of my places, and I'm like, why haven't we seen anyone in 3 hours? Because 47 closures were for who the hell knows what, and we don't know about
Can I
them.
clarify? Yeah, I think.
Please listen up, because this is going to be clarification.
This is important, and Tina, correct me if I'm wrong. The number of events down here at the bottom, that wasn't the closures. The closures were up top, so we had a total of 7 closures.
Well, no, wait. No, we did partial. Some of these are partial closures.
No.
Yeah, there are no partial closures on Main Street in the last 3 years.
That's not what we discussed last time.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we wanted a clarification last time.
Okay, you're right. We didn't get a clarification last time. We weren't
And
sure.
by the way, one other point about the numbers, I think you objected to the numbers. They weren't the same as the last time. They were not the same as the last time. We went back and double checked, triple checked.
That's the reason
and we moved parades because you didn't want parades segregated out.
I agree.
So we added that towards the total event.
But the number on the Festival of Leaves is the exact same number that was on there last time that we had this 2 weeks ago, but it says on here includes the parade price. On the family fun day, you have a higher price on this one that says includes, because I have a picture of last 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So
let me look at that.
It's a typo.
I don't think it was.
Okay, so the numbers. I'm sorry, I was going off last time.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Again, I think this needs a little clarification. I'm not sure we reached consensus on it. Or different. Did we, I don't recall.
Could we possibly do that?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm asking. I think we should vote again.
Okay, so should the town limit the total number of events held on Main Street over the course of the year? All right, should the town limit the total number of events held on Main Street over the course of the year? And I think it's reasonable to say that's implying that it's closing Main Street. Okay, all right, so no limit. No limit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No limit. So you can close any time.
Take mine away.
Much golf. 1 per week.
Based on the criteria that we're setting up here, I mean, we're just not gonna openly,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So it's based on
Yes,
that, got it, all right.
Okay. 1 per week.
No.
No? Okay. 1 per month. Closure of Main Street limited to 1 per month based on the criteria.
We had an option before of every 2 weeks or
That's
something.
right. Okay. Once a quarter. I don't think any. Oh yeah, I had one once a quarter. Two once a quarter. Okay. And then we had someone change the other to 2 times a month is the limit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Excellent. Good feedback. I'm going to add a question if that's okay, because I think this is all right. I may be getting myself in trouble. The gazebo in Village Commons. Village Commons. If you're going to close the parking lot for Village Commons, should that be on the same criteria as Main Street? Close it twice a month?
No.
Okay, so you want to go through the question. Okay, so Village Commons, closing the parking lot at Village Commons.
Well, can you clarify the closure of the parking lot? Is that the whole parking lot or half of the parking lot?
Okay, I'll ask, maybe we'll do 2 questions.
Okay,
All
then
right, so we'll
2.
do the full parking lot. Full parking lot, Village Commons, which includes the 11 places in front of the visitor center. Okay, that's the full parking lot. Should that parking lot be closed for an event applicant? No limit. So it can be closed every day. We have event applicants that's closed every day. No limit. Okay, we got 2, 3, 4, 5. Should it be once per week? 1 per month. So the gazebo parking lot full closure once per month. Should it be twice per month? Twice per month, same as Main Street. Okay, 2, 4, 5, 6, 8. Once per quarter. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I'm interested. I did mulling on that.
Wait, you're saying the 11s? Aren't there more than 11?
There are. We'll talk.
That's the partial.
Yeah,
So,
I'm confused. I
yeah,
just don't know.
so you have the full parking lot. You have the gazebo. Then you have the parking directly in front of the visitor center. And I think there's 11 spots there. All right. And then you have all the other parking.
Does that include the parking in front of Element as well on the street?
No.
No.
It doesn't. Okay, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so that was full closure. So it looked like consensus was 2 times per month for full closure. All right, how about partial closure? So partial now is everything except those 11 spots. So those 11 spots stay open. Those 11
No,
spots
mine's
stay
on
open.
vibrate.
This is the partial closure of the gazebo. Y'all with me? Okay, so let's go with what the other consensus. Should that also be twice per month?
But no, I'm not with you. You
Okay.
mean you keep that parking open, but
Yes.
you close what? What do
You
you
close
The back part of the parking lot.
Oh, the back. Okay, I got you. But isn't that a safety
How do you
hazard?
get into that?
No, they have
How do you get
these
into
big
that?
That is a safety
barricades.
hazard.
But yeah.
Big
It
in,
is a safety
Yeah, I
there's
think
an
it
idea
is
that
for
you
young
keep
children.
those
Okay.
spots open. Those 11
But how
spots.
can they drive there? If the barriers are up, blocking
Excuse
Main
me,
Street.
It'll be off of
everybody.
Main Street.
Someone has a phone or something on, because I'm hearing music.
It's the little man.
Okay. Officer, Chief, can you get him
What I
Oh,
was-
he's not bothering anything.
What I was saying was,
Get into
Main
trouble.
Street is closed. You can't get to that parking
No,
lot.
sir, I'm sorry. Let me help.
That's what
Let me help. So there are many events. For instance, if you go to the last page, these are big events where they have a lot of closures of Main Street, etc. But there's, I'm sorry, not the next page. We have a total of 60 events for 2019. Of those 60 events, many of those events do full closures of the gazebo. Some of those events do a partial closure, which allows those 11 spots open for businesses on that end of Main Street.
Okay, I got a question.
Yep.
Why do we have those 11 parking spaces anyway?
Well, we have all the parking.
Why?
Why are they?
Why are they closed? Why wouldn't you close them off on the end where my business is?
I'm
bigger.
sorry, I don't understand the question.
Well, no, you ought to ask that question. I mean, you close it off on the upper end. Doesn't benefit anybody on this end, so why are you closing them off at all?
So, again, Gary, go ahead.
I think the reason for those 11 closures, and pardon me if I misspeak here, but I think a lot of those closures for those 11 were for the visitor center and visitors coming in. That was why they were left. So,
Is that the
visitors-
only reason?
I'm pretty sure that's the only reason, so visitors who come to the town. And also for, I think that's where the trolley stops.
Or did you get a lot of complaints?
The trolley can't go in there.
No, the trolley can't go
I
in.
think it's a combination, I think it's a combination. I think, okay, I misunderstood your question, I apologize. When I heard closure, I thought we were blocking those. So you're saying, why are those 11 spots allowed to remain open?
Right.
Right, and I think he nailed it because
I heard what he said.
visitor
And I
centers.
asked him, was it because did somebody complain?
I'm sure business owners on that end of Main Street wanted
Let's
to have
vote.
parking.
Yes, that's why.
There's too much noise in the room.
Okay, well, you know, y'all listen sometimes. We were trying to find out why those 11 are open.
I mean,
And why on my end of the store, they're not.
So
And they said it's for the gazebo.
Okay, all right, so let's go, yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna suggest that maybe there also needs to be criteria stipulated for that, and then it might be easier to vote.
Criteria for the gazebo.
Sure.
So let's see, 11 o'clock, we should be out of here.
Okay, good. All right,
It just kind of stands to reason that if we have it for Main Street, we would have.
All right,
to too.
so what's good feedback? So we're thinking that there's criteria for Main Street, and maybe the same and maybe not the same for Village Commons. All right. So let's assume then that we're going to set up a criteria for the gazebo that's measurable, and we're going to have the criteria for Main Street. So if we go back to the question, we are on partial closure. Okay, partial closure, assuming there's a criteria that's measurable, should we allow partial closures of the gazebo? And let's start with, I think twice a month seems to be, twice a month. Should the twice a month closure be allowed for the gazebo?
Partial closure.
Partial closure,
Sure, twice a month.
okay? All right, so we got full 3. All right, how about,
Should be no limit.
There are 11 spots right in front of the visitor center. So if those are open and the rest is closed, that's a partial closure.
But voting is
All right,
sorry.
we need a little clarification here. Did you have a question about
Well,
what we're
yes,
talking about?
because if you're gonna have full closure twice a month and partial closure twice a month, then it's closed all month. In the weekend.
Well,
Basically.
at least part of it is closed all the
Except for
time.
11 spaces. I mean, which is okay, but why have it different, for those 11 spaces?
okay, so visitor center, gazebo, excuse my visitor center, gazebo parking, partial closure is all the parking back in here, and these stay open.
Yeah.
Okay? These stay open. That's partial closure. Full closure is they park for the event in these spots, and we block the entrance. Yeah, Bill?
Well, I had a lot of input on that. Matt, you're not showing the ballots that were installed for this.
True. They're right here.
I was trying to be impartial.
Yeah.
But, I know, I do have some knowledge of this thing.
I do too.
There's ballots at the end of this street there. As this street goes forward, this is Main here. Down here is a set of ballots. To protect people that are walking in this place, we know about dump trucks and how they kill people. The whole safety issue in our nature today, what's going on in different communities, not here, thank God. Thanks for our police. But,
There's
and there's ballots. Let me get it straight. I don't know what this is.
That was the 11 spot.
Do we have ballards on
There's
this?
a set of ballards right here.
These are the ones that.
And then there's ballots on Chester Street, right in front of the museum. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
Oh,
sir.
because the ones over here, the ones, okay, I got you.
So here's your partial closure right
They
here.
don't, they put, okay, the black ones, that's what they like, okay.
And you gotta remember, that's parking here, parking here. Plus, that limited so much cheap right here. Or you got an electric device there.
In the back, there's some charging stations, yes.
So this is partial, and this here, of course, is full. Everything's closed. It takes this.
So where's the chargers for the Teslas? I don't think we want to take that way.
Those are in the partial.
Yeah.
Did you bring your
They are
Tesla
partial?
today? I have to charge my
The
car.
charging station is in the partial.
Me and that guy that makes $50,000 a day.
As I was sitting here, what I was thinking about is what even hasn't been discussed. Where do those people park?
In front of Ellen.
Where do they park? We have some elderly people in this community. Where do they park?
You got one space.
I mean, you got all this parking spot back here, and if I was a business owner on this side,
You have one.
I sat beside the guy the other meeting and restaurants. You got a restaurant here, you got a restaurant here, you got one over here.
A what?
Restaurants.
Yeah, you got one handicap in front of Soul Mountain.
Yeah, but if this is closed down, there's nobody.
No restaurant.
Right,
No
yeah.
restaurant.
So there's, that's what we tried to do the last time with these ballots. Try to keep this space open right here so that you had some parking. But then, how do you keep that open without a sign that says 10-minute parking or half an hour for, but then you got restaurant people.
Well, and also you have an enforcement issue.
The chief and I have discussed that.
Yes.
Sorry, Matt, I'm trying to say.
That's
quiet.
Okay.
And can I elaborate on that, Mr. Bill? And I appreciate, I know we went round and round on this, but when you pull into these parking spots that are here, and you have the ballards here, you have the cars that are parked, and you have enough room for the car to come in. Well, if I'm trying to back out and the car's coming in, where are we gonna go? We're all clustered on top of one another. Every time we've put the ballard up there, I've watched 3 to 4 people almost get run over because the ballards are there. Because when I come pulling in, not seeing anything, and I pull up to the ballards, and all these cars are parked on the side here, I am backing my vehicle out. Not paying any attention. Some people have cameras in the back of their car, some of us do not. That is a hazard issue and a safety issue in our community.
Also, there's also cars that are coming in behind you.
That's right.
And you cannot
That's right,
back
that
up.
you can't back
I've
up.
seen
So
it.
it stacks up on top of one another.
Signage.
All right, so let's go back to just full closure and partial closure of the gazebo. Let's go back to that question, full closure. I know we got to vote, but I think now understanding, maybe we may have a better idea. So should the town limit the total number of full closure, that includes closing it here, so that this parking is part of the event for the village common area. Should that be no limit? So anytime, no limit, full closure of the gazebo, park, 1. Okay?
Wait a minute, with criteria though.
Yeah.
You're gonna create some criteria, so,
Yes,
yeah.
as long as they meet the criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as they meet the criteria,
It's going to
sure.
be in that.
Yes, then I say.
I'm
no
there.
limit.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Full closure with criteria, 1 time a week. Okay. Full closure with criteria, 1 time a month. Full closure with criteria, twice a month. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Once a quarter. All right, so I got some good feedback on that. That's good. All right, partial closure. Okay, so partial closure, again, leaves these spots in front of the visitor center open. Partial closure. I'm going to start with it. Twice a month. Should that also be twice a month with criteria? The same as before. Twice a month. Partial closure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? No limit. Partial closure, no limit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? Once a month. Once a week. Okay, so we got.
Never partial closure.
Yeah, that would be my
All right,
answer.
so who thinks there should never be partial closure, that we should always have full closure for the gazebo for an event? 3.
It's a safety.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
I think
you're right.
Chip's okay. I think we need to spend time now on the criteria
You're
for the
right,
rest.
yeah. Actually, you know what, can we bring that up again, because actually, he's got a point, because I wasn't thinking about it. Partial closure is a safety hazard a little bit, so.
Never
I think we
partial
got
closure.
the input. I mean,
Never partial closure.
Remember, one of the things that we did not list as a criteria is public safety. Public safety should always be considered in the permitting process, and I presume it is and will be.
Well, I wasn't thinking necessarily about the traffic pattern and people running into each other's cars, but you know, a lot of events that he does involve a lot of children running through the gazebo area, and keeping those spaces open, people pulling out, that can be an actual safety hazard for children. I'm thinking just about, you know.
Will someone please think of the children?
I know, seriously. And I'm that person. Oh, we have a problem. Okay. No, I mean, but seriously, it is a problem for them.
Yeah, because there's a
Okay, how
child.
about-
Exactly.
How about
It's a great
criteria for the
Anyone
gazebo,
needs an
for use of
example.
the gazebo? Okay, we talked about criteria for the use of Main Street closure, attendance, even distribution, qualitative, revenue, number of vendors, cost to the town, history of the events. Okay, that's Main Street.
Is this with no closure of parking?
This is closing Main Street.
This is closing Main Street. Now we're
That's
asking
the question.
for the gazebo area alone. Attendance needs to be number one on that.
Pretty much it's everything except for the even distribution.
We're
Yes.
not-
Even
We're not organized, folks. We're just shouting out. We want to capture these thoughts. So why don't you go through
Okay.
the process?
So should closing the gazebo still be based on attendance as a criteria? Okay. Even distribution doesn't really apply. Qualitative?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Probably more important.
Probably more important, someone said. Revenue that's being
Probably-
generated?
Probably not relevant.
Closure?
I would say not relevant. Most events at a gazebo aren't fundraising.
Oh, you're wrong.
All right, so who thinks revenue should not be a criteria? Should not be? Raise your hand.
Should not be a
Should not be
criteria.
a criteria.
For Village Commons, correct?
Village Commons. Okay. Who thinks it should be? Okay.
Sir, Matt, can you answer a question, please? So we have events, we have religious activities, we have
Weddings.
not necessarily weddings, but
Music.
music. Now, is there criteria right now that is taken into consideration for those? Is there any criteria that is used when a church wants to book some music and, right?
Yeah, there's, Tina, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no criteria.
There is no criteria.
Now, I can also tell you that so Chief, you correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe Gene and Bill, you guys can as well, or other council members. There's a First Amendment right for individuals to be considered for public speech and public, that they're allowed to use government property. Okay, so if I chose to stand at the gazebo on a Wednesday afternoon and have a conversation with whoever wants to listen, okay,
Hypothetically.
we're allowed, we must by law, I believe the law says that we have to set up, and we could set up a section, an area, and give them their due process as far as where to communicate. Right now, we don't set an area up. They're just, if they want to go to the gazebo, and if they want to have themselves a little rally, they're allowed to do that.
No permit, no.
Gary.
Depends on the number.
Don't we require a permit for that, Matt?
Yeah.
And it's usually first come, first served when it comes to that.
I think the chief.
We do encourage a permit. The permit simply reserves your spot.
Yes, sir.
But a demonstration can occur on any public space without.
Absolutely. I'm thinking more like, if there is church services there, we live a block away, I hear them all the time. And
it's
so
very nice.
they can't, a church service cannot follow the same criteria as far as attendance
But it has
and
its
rev,
own
I mean,
criteria. It has its own criteria. All, I think.
Well, no, if you're
Matt is-
making a criteria
That's what I'm
for
asking.
that gazebo area,
Oh, you can't,
that's where they're at, and they can't say, we're gonna have a
consider-
revival, and I'm hoping we get 75, but we might get 10.
Well, I think that's the reason why we're saying revenue is not.
Clarify my question, are we talking about use of the gazebo or just closing the parking lot?
Use of the gazebo.
I thought we were just talking about closing.
No, at this point, we're talking about closing the parking lot.
You could use the gazebo today.
That's right.
It's just-
That's right.
As long
As long as you're not closing the parking lot.
I totally got married there and there.
So I'm not sure where we are exactly. We were talking about closing,
Village Commons criteria.
Criteria.
So revenue is not a major priority for closing the parking lot. That's what I'm hearing. Vendors, not really, cost to the town. Doesn't really cost the
Well,
town.
actually, I've seen the gazebo
Well,
parking area
Like
closed.
some cost to have people come out and turn the ballards up and minor. History of the events. Okay. Good. All right, now, if this is Main Street, so it sounds like we're looking at attendance as a criteria for the event, for gazebo, and some qualitative assessment is a criteria. If we go to Main Street, so how am I going to measure, how would we measure, are these the 7 criteria that we all are in agreement? Should we narrow it down to 5 or 3?
3 or 4.
Okay, so who thinks the number of events for closing Main Street? Closing Main Street, which you remember Mr. Seelock had the ballard all the way at Royal Avenue, or not Royal, it's 2nd Street.
No, it's Royal.
It's right before Royal.
Right.
All the way down by the Blue Ridge Avenue. Full closure of Main Street. Should criteria remain as one of the top 3, or attendance, I'm sorry, should that be the top 3 criteria?
That should be the number one criteria.
Who thinks it should be?
Yeah,
The number
you don't
one.
even have to count.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Who thinks the even distribution of vendors on Main Street should be a major criteria? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's an 8. Okay. Good. Qualitative.
Can you define that?
I'm gonna let him.
Can you qualify?
I suggested it's very hard to measure, but
Yeah.
I mean, people like.
Each is their own.
How do you measure?
Okay.
Actually, so the large festivals, they do rate them online. So, and some of our festivals are actually rated. This is a great, because there are people who like to go from festival to festival, and they actually get a lot of feedback. So there are
And they're jewelry
places that do
shows.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Should that be one of the
So
top
you're
3?
saying that they're rated anyway, whether we
No, there
like
are
it or
some
not?
that are rated, so like our wine and craft, I think is rated. There's, because people like to go to different festivals and they want to feedback whether this is a good festival to go to.
So
So
I
they're
hear-
coming from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I hear
or something like that.
that.
Yeah.
So I guess right now, let me ask, so should qualitative be part of the top 3? If we're only choosing 3, should that be top 3?
Yeah. Because I think that will all directly relate to revenue.
Well,
If it's a good festival with
Yeah.
even
And
distribution,
remember
high
what-
attendance.
What you're doing now is you're advising the recommendation that will ultimately be made to the town council on the permitting
Yeah,
process.
that's right. And I'm picking 3 now just to try to hone in on what I think is the major revenue. Should revenue generation and that be determined, because almost revenue to me if an event generates a lot of revenue, it should kind of check that off, maybe.
If it has a ton of people, it's evenly distributed, and it's quality, then it should generate revenue.
Okay, so revenue, raise your hand.
Well, I mean,
Okay. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Yep, right? Okay. I don't know what criteria, that the event allows vendors outside the store?
Well, outside vendors, that
Well,
is.
if we have even distribution, wouldn't that be?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that would
So-
fall under the same, that would fall
it's
under.
the
Okay,
same,
so
if that's what we
vendor-
were talking
we can-
about.
So-
Vendors down the street,
Okay.
even distribution.
Should cost of the town be a criteria?
No.
Revenue.
Generation revenue?
Well, it's also
businesses?
related to earlier questions that we answered.
Mm-hmm.
If it's 50/50.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Okay. History of the events, should that be a criteria?
What do you say? No, it's very
I'm
important.
shaking my head at something else. The history of the event should be taken into. You're not gonna close Main Street for 100 people. You're just not gonna do it. You're gonna close Main Street for a couple thousand people because you have to.
Number one criteria is attendance, that's what we're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the history of the event's gonna play right into that.
I think as well, history
Same
of the event
package.
could encompass things like behaviour. Were there problems?
Yeah.
Was there disruption? Was the event itself controversial? Whatever, right? I think the history of the event is important if it's going to
All he's trying to do is to find out, to get synthesis on the points that will go into the permit.
History would go on the board after someone said, well, if there are two people applying for the same
Right.
day.
Yeah,
I can apply it.
Yeah.
apply it at that point.
Yeah.
What if somebody wants to do a new event? You have no history.
Yeah, that's
So you're kind of like,
There, bingo, right? So now, if we go to attendance, it sounds like attendance, even distribution, and revenue are the major, sounds like the three major.
Did you have something you want to say, sir?
So your attendance and your qualitative and your revenue are all tucked together. The more people you have, the more revenue you have, the better the quality. Those three will be all in one piece.
And that will help rate you.
And that'll end up rating you,
Okay, so here's the question. Willie nailed it. Main Street's not gonna be open for 100 people, or closed for 100 people. Right? Now, here's my question. Question of the night. How does the town that's approving an application measure that, determine that? Right? So if,
Someone from the town needs to go to the event and count the people.
No, we need to know ahead of time, is what he's saying. How do we know what that's going to be?
Remember, we're designing a permitting
Yes.
process.
Right.
So, some kind of application.
I think we had.
So I think that you should have some assumptions for attendance with a new event.
Hold on, let her speak.
So I think you should have some assumptions for attendance if it's a new event, and you should be accountable to some degree for that attendance, and that will score, for you whether you're going to get to next year. So if you said, oh, there's going to be, 5,000 people and 100 people show up, that's going to look, you're probably not going to be able to do it next year. But there are ways to measure attendance. They do it for crowds, and what they do is they take sections of the street, and let's say they break Main Street into 50 sections, and people actually count and say the average number, this is the average number of people in this section, and they multiply it by 50 sections.
And who's the they?
And it could be someone from the town, it could be someone from the, from the event, but that, that they could show. And then the turnover is every 2 hours, but, they should have to report back on that event, this is our attendance, and this is how we counted it.
And then if it has ticket sales, that's a simple answer.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, all right,
Depending on
so let's take
Weather dependent.
Let's take this a step further. Okay. Because this is really for me, very valuable information. So if attendance is the criteria, if we're gonna have, as part of the application, what is your estimated attendance, right? Is on the application, and then the attendance is verified to some degree, right? So the question now is, what number of people is the right number to close Main Street based upon the assumption for a new applicant or last year's past performance? What's that number to close Main Street?
Sir?
Yes.
I think it'd be very difficult for a new activity to close Main Street. There's no history there. I don't care what the activity is. To say you're going to get 1,000 or 2,000 people at a brand new event is probably not very reasonable.
Unless they've done the event elsewhere and it is a history of doing it.
Very reasonable, I agree. But again, brand new events, you'd be hard pressed to justify closing our Main Street.
But I think.
But we've had two new events.
But I think part of it is we haven't determined what the criteria is as far as the number of people is used as a criteria. So if I'm a new event and the number's 10.
Good point. All right.
If the number's 10, right? Or if the number's 1,000,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So what I'm driving at is, what do I think that number should be to close Main
You want to
Street?
say about that? She's been pretty good.
Forgive me for this, but have we had new applications come in for new events?
5 years running.
Yeah.
This is 5 years in the works.
5 years and every year that increases in number, so he pretty well.
But we didn't ask for closure. We didn't ask for closure of Main Street the first 2 years.
Right.
Okay?
I'm using this as so if assume Willie wanted to close Main Street, and this is his first year, is the audience saying we should not allow any new people to close Main Street?
I don't agree with that, because then you're eliminating growth.
All right, so the answer is new applicants can close Main Street. Sure. Right? So now I'm trying to drive at the number, and I don't want to. I'm gonna maybe do ranges because I'm trying to weed this, get this thing.
I'll just throw out a start. I'll bid 1,000.
Okay.
I was gonna bid 1,500, so.
Yes, sir, and then over here.
Hey, Chief, what do you bid?
I would have went with 1,500.
And I actually was.
1,500 you can manage within the gazebo area fairly easily.
No, this is Main Street.
Closing.
Anything less than 1,500, you could stay in the gazebo.
Manage at the
Bingo.
gazebo.
More than that, I think you would be looking at.
Right over here, very patient.
The town of Front Royal with the Chamber of Commerce and the Heritage Society has done a wonderful job every year. You have to sign up for registration based on the number of spaces you got, so that way you're going to be aware of what kind of flow of vendors you're going to have, and you can base that on the attendance.
Except, the question is, will you get that in the application process?
Well-
Will the town know?
So what you're
in the
saying is, it's
application?
not the number of attendees, it's the number of vendors to close Main Street?
How much space are you going?
Yeah, sure, but not all places put vendors on Main Street.
So,
And you can't
Hold
plan.
it, one
Well,
at a time.
There's no one else talking.
This is a, well, if you will, is it okay with you? Let someone else.
Absolutely, sir. How many times have I spoken tonight?
Stand up. A lot.
No, she really has.
Oh,
She's been
we're gonna
good.
vote on that.
No,
Oh,
she's
she's
been
been good. Do you mean relative to other things?
I mean,
or-
let's get on.
Right here.
Okay, perhaps I'm overthinking this, but I'm not trying to blow smoke up our chief of police, who's a friend of mine, but I think we're making this more difficult than it is.
Agreed.
I think he and his good people are well equipped to know, based upon the applications and the concern and the background work that they do prior to any of these events anyway, knowing when we should close that street or not.
Okay, interesting. So, your point is that
That man has a
that
history
staff,
in administration of justice and public safety. No disrespect, I have a degree in it, which means nothing.
I get it.
But not, we don't. And we all have opinions and we all have emotions. That man has experience and history.
I say that's good, but I think we need to know what that number is, so we don't put in an application.
He just said, I got it. I got it.
all right, so are we good? Are we good with 1,500?
Cable, is that what you said?
I think that's a reasonable number.
Yeah.
Anything less than that, you can contain within the gazebo.
Raise your hand, 1,500. Okay, clear consensus.
It's just to cloud it, there's a big difference between a three-hour event when 1,500 are there and an all-day event where 1,500 go through it. Because most people are going to be in that all-day event for 2 or 3 hours.
All right, now, if this is Main Street numbers, Main Street numbers, oh geez, I'm gonna ask the question, I don't even know what the number is.
He already answered it.
So how many,
Under 1,000,
you might know, Willie, or Nikki, how many for parking places are there at the gazebo? Or maybe we do it by people. Maybe we do it by people? So should,
46, 47.
so if we have criteria, if we have the criteria as attendance for the
Some 2
gazebo,
hours and some 4 hours, we're gonna split them
okay,
up.
full closure of the gazebo. You with me? Full closure of Village Commons. What number of people should be the criteria for full closure of the gazebo, Chief?
For full closure of the gazebo?
Yeah.
No.
Certainly 15. I would say half that, 750.
For just the gazebo. Main Street's open. For full closure gazebo, you say 750.
Yeah, are you still doing it? I'm
So
sorry, did you guys make a decision on the partial or full?
Yeah, we're
But right now, I'm just saying full, I'm just saying full
So
closure.
just full? Yeah, well, and that, some of this is gonna depend on how that pavilion shakes out and what that looks like. So I would reserve comment until we get a clearer picture of what that looks like, because I
No,
feel.
can't reserve anything.
All right. I would wager to say, I would wager to say anything up to that, you would close it. Anything less than 750, I would leave the parking lot open.
Okay, so it's 750. All right, who agrees 750 is the right number? Okay, full closure, good. Okay. All right.
I have a
Partial.
question. I have a quick question. Just going back a little bit, how many attendees were at the wine and craft?
Nikki, how many people do you get to wine craft?
About 8,000.
About 8,000.
And so is it, somebody made a point, it wouldn't be 1,500 throughout the whole day or 750 throughout the whole day. Is it like 1,500 2 hours? It's like a turnover number, so is it 1,500 every 2 hours?
I prefer we stick with just a number because I don't want to have
That's
somebody
pretty
else.
low to close down all meetings.
That's
really-
1,500 people, that would be good.
That isn't good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we want to go back maybe and rethink this.
I
All right,
mean-
so let's go back and rethink, and Chips, this is really important, if you don't mind me keep going on this.
I'm going to speak out
So-
and say I don't think we are qualified to say.
Okay.
Because we don't really know what 1,500 means. Do we really know what
Well,
1,500
actually,
means?
Well, if we know the wine and craft is 8,000.
Because the police
how
are the
many
ones
people-
I had 5.
Okay,
And people
5,000.
say, people can sit in this room and disagree with me. I've got drone footage of the parade out and afterwards that shows that we have weather contingent. Because again, when it started raining, they moved on.
Okay.
But with the wine and craft, when it starts
So
raining, they
full
move on as
closure,
well.
full closure of Main Street now. Full closure of Main Street, all day closure.
All day.
All day. The wine and craft, to give you an idea, is 8,000.
Yeah.
Okay, if everybody's been to the wine and craft, what's the number? Should it be 5,000? 5,000?
3 to 5, something like that.
3 to 5.
May I throw a number in there? May I throw a number just based upon common sense when that man there tells his people we're good to go at the end? It's okay to take the
But-
things up?
Well,
Remember, I don't have a vote, fortunately, but I would suggest respectfully that police be part of the permitting process. And if Kale looks at an application and says, oh my God,
Yeah,
this is gonna.
that's automatic.
It's automatic.
That's all that's
That's
automatic.
my biggest
Yeah,
concern.
so I'm just trying to get an idea for an applicant. So the applicant comes in and the applicant says, we had 8,000 last year, right? So as far as the attendance criteria, if I'm using 5,000 as my number, that's a check.
For all day.
All day closure. Everybody go 5,000?
5,000.
Everybody go 5,000? Full closure Main Street.
yeah.
Do we have an idea of what National Night Out brought?
We typically between 1,500 and 2,000 when it's really heavy, and that's why one of my
But it's
metrics.
building, right? I
That
mean,
pretty
we've
much
seen an
makes-
increase over the last couple of years, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that full closure Main Street?
So that gives you an idea.
That's not a closure of Main Street.
Well, we do some,
That's not a full closure of Main Street.
No, it's not.
That's just a gazebo.
My point is, it gives us a frame of reference between 5,000 or 8,000
Yep.
and closing Main Street. and what 1,500 to 2,000 might bring us, and maybe 15 to 2 is not needed, right?
For full
And it needs
closure.
to go up.
That's why we said 5,000 for full closure.
If we're talking about even distribution, 1,500 people is not even distribution. It's not gonna help everybody on that side of the street.
Okay.
We're not gonna see any of those people.
I'm trying to wrap up, guys, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, so 5,000,
Yeah.
full closure Main Street. Are we still at 750 full closure gazebo?
It depends on the event, on the full closure of the gazebo at 750.
Because you've got churches that'll never reach that.
Aren't gonna ever
They're
reach
not
that.
They don't close, they don't close the parking lot.
Yeah, they don't.
They do.
They
Hold
don't,
on a
not
second.
through, not through.
Let's hear the chief.
So a couple of comments on shutting down from 1,500 to 750 for a full closure, because that seems pretty extreme. Again, the problem especially comes during some of these events during the fall. It gets dark earlier, and that parking lot's not super well lit. So when you've got a bunch of people, especially kids, running around the parking lot there, people backing out, pulling in, it gets pretty dark. So I think 750 is probably as much as you want to wager before you close the entire parking lot.
Okay, all right. Chips? I'm done.
So, and I'm going to make this closing quite quick. On the other hand, I want you all to have the opportunity to say whatever you have to say to complete the process. We're talking about process only, not about the suggestions. Is there anything that anyone would like to say to complete the evening process for themselves? So, and did you have something?
Something real quick. This has been kind of a trying 24 hours for a lot of us. And I have to say that this was very productive. I feel like compared to last time, we got a lot more worked out and kind of understand where we're going with not just the questions, but the answers. We have some answers now too.
I have a question too.
Yes, Matt.
Should we have the last event, or do we feel like we've got enough? Do you think the public has given enough input?
Another event.
I don't feel necessarily I need it.
Didn't you already schedule it?
No, it's already been scheduled. We need to see this through. He's been paid for 3 events for us to come in to hear what we've come up with. You came up with something from last time to this time. So again, I would like to see more accurate figures that are all right on the numbers, and I'll show this to you.
Okay, so
when I'm done. So the third, sure.
But I'd like to ask, what are your proposals that would be the subject matter of the third meeting?
That's what we're going to talk about at the third event, the proposed permitting process. Patricia, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, this is a very democratic process.
Thanks, Mom.
To a certain extent, it's democratic, but it's anything else? Thank you all for coming out. I mean, tremendous input. And I would say, in defense of all of you who came the first time, we knew more about what we wanted to talk about because we were there.
Actually, I do want to say one thing. I want to thank Carrie Barnhart for kind of lending her hand and helping to kind of have a better process this time around. Thank you, Carrie.